Hello, everyone, and welcome to SaksWorks Presents Learn with the List. Love to just get that branding together. It makes me feel so good. My name is Rachel Sklar. I'm the VP of Programming and Content at SaksWorks. I am also a proud member of the List, a dynamic and incredible leadership community for women that Anne Chiquette will tell you about shortly. I'm so excited to have this series about learning with the List. And particularly today, we are going to level up our leadership with Umbreen Bhatti, who is the director of the Athena Center for Leadership at Barnard University, and who is also amazing. I know her, so I can say that. I feel like in what is the cartoon where they're like, I know her. Anyhow, that's how I feel with all of our amazing guests, because I'm always so excited that I actually get to know them in real life. And Anne Chiquette, who is the founder of New Power Media, which includes a portfolio including The List and Badass Babes. And Anne will tell you more about The List and the goal of this session. But right now, I'm just so excited to welcome you to this amazing session. Before we jump in, I just want to welcome you to SaksWorks whenever it is convenient for you. We are welcoming people into our spaces. If you're vaccinated, we care about your safety. And you can come and enjoy lovely plants and our wonderful programming and our wonderful amenities and some pretty kick-ass meeting space, if I do say so myself, just working space, reading in a comfortable nook. Anyhow, I'll tell you more about SaksWorks after, but in the meantime, you can just go to saksworks.com and get a complimentary day pass if you would like. And now I will hand the reins over to Anne Chiquette to introduce how to level up your leadership today with Umbreen.
Thank you, Rachel. I am so thrilled to be here. I'm so thrilled to be here with Umbreen. I am founder and CEO of New Power Media, leader of The List. I think we've got some of the big life community here. And it's such a joy to be here and to bring this conversation to you. And thank you to SaksWorks for doing such an amazing pivot to these virtual events. Well, we need a little bit of virtual eventing. This conversation, well, first of all, before I go anywhere, before I introduce Umbreen, I want this conversation to be what you need, what everyone in the audience needs. And so we have the Q&A open. Please put your questions in there. I will keep it open on my screen. I'm doing it right now while we're having the talk so that I can see what questions you're asking as we go. I appreciate that so much. So please put your questions in there. I did a prep session with Umbreen for this, and she blew me away in just 2 minutes on the phone, talking about how we reframe leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? And particularly, what does it mean to be a leader now, right? We are, I mean, I am the leader of my tiny little office that I can put my hands on both sides of the wall, right? It makes you feel small. It can diminish your sense of leadership when you can't be around the people who you have to lead. And so let's start there. And I want to start with Umbreen. I want to set some intentions, not in a crazy woo-woo way, but in a way to get clear. There's a huge amount of possibility that we could cover in leadership. So Umbreen, at the end of this session, what are the things that you want this audience to walk away with?
That is a great question. And it's something I ask myself before every single meeting I go to, so that the meeting is actually useful. I want you all to feel great. That's actually probably the first thing I want, is to just feel great. I want you to have a couple of really tactical things you could actually do right away. And I want you to, think about leadership a little bit differently if you haven't been.
That's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate the feel great. For me, yes to the steps walking away, but I also, in addition, want people to see their leadership in a different way, not just when you're standing there at the front of the room, being commanding, or you're taking your press photos with your arms crossed in the traditional pose, or I want you to see yourself as a leader in all parts of your life, and and to occasionally recognize that in yourself and say, good job, good job.
Or maybe just a leader in the parts of your life you want to lead in. Like all parts of your life is, I don't know, it's a lot. Like, I don't want to do that. And so I think it's worth thinking about whether a leader has to be like an identity I hold that I have to bring to every single place that I am. I think you can exhibit leadership where you need to. I don't think you have to be a leader like all the time. I don't think it has to be part of your identity personally. Like, that's just my take on it.
I love that so much. I am someone who has really studied young women's leadership, and studied and shaped and cheerleaded for my entire career. And I've sort of had this longer vision about the way we think about what it means to be a leader has changed. But before we sort of get into some of that headier space, Umbreen, will you talk about your personal journey in leadership? Because you have a lot of dots that have sort of all been connected into this job that you have.
I will,
Give us the quick cliff notes on your backstory.
Okay, so you don't want like 1979, born in the winter. Okay, got it. So I did just have my birthday last week, so that was nice. So I think I'm a like a career jumper, an industry hopper by design, because I am like a process person. Like, I like seeing how processes work in different places. So I went to Barnard, which thank you. I went to Barnard back now as the director of the center. And when I left New York, I left. I didn't, I came back for visits, but I never lived here. I never got to do the thing where like everybody graduated and then they went and lived with their roommates in Brooklyn. Like, I didn't get to do that. I went abroad for a couple of years. And in part because my dad, when I was graduating, was like, if you think you're gonna like just live alone in New York, like that's not happening. And I was like, oh, right. So the like personal progress I've made is not necessarily family progress. So like, got it. So I went abroad. I lived with my grandmother. I spent a year in Pakistan, a year in Syria, and came back, went to law school, a conventional choice, and practiced law for about 7-8 years at a law firm at the ACLU, got to do some really fun and cool things. But this is such a weird quirk of like stupid things that result in decisions. I didn't want to take like another bar exam. Like, I didn't want to keep doing that. I was licensed in New York and Delaware and DC, and we were in California at that point. And it was like, I'm not doing this again. I went on maternity leave and I didn't go back to the organization. And it was not like, I had not had a great experience. It was one of those where like, I'm happy, I'm gone, I'm closing out my desk feel. And I went and worked on a project that I had come up with my husband and a friend that was really looking at something that like bothered me for a really long time. And that was what news coverage of Islam and Muslims looked like. So at that point, we were almost a decade post 9/11, and the conversations were still so stupid and small. And it was right around the time of the Ground Zero Mosque thing. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like, folks were starting a center, like a Muslim community center, actually, I think near Ground Zero. And it was, Newt Gingrich was like, this is the mark of a successful jihad. This is what Muslims are trying to do. It was like this huge thing. It was like the biggest religion story of the year. And it was so unnuanced, like like, what's the difference between a Shia and a Sunni? It felt like we hadn't moved at all. And so I worked on that project, which, by the way, like failed. We tried lots of things. It didn't work. And partway through, realized that as I was doing this project, I didn't know enough about journalism to like really do it well. I went to Stanford on a journalism fellowship and got introduced to human-centered design work there too, which was really great because when I finished the fellowship, I was neither a lawyer who, represented media companies nor a journalist who wrote about the law. So like, what was I? And really moved into doing human-centered design work, especially helping like organizations that serve the public good in some way meet their audience's needs, figure out how they're actually going to serve the constituents they have. Went to KQED, which is the public media station in San Francisco, and did that work there by running the innovation lab and then doing it here. And so this is something that I like think about a lot. And I just had a great conversation with someone the other night about it. There is a through line, right? But most conversations I have, like if I'm applying for a job or something, it's often like, we really like you, we don't get you. Like, we don't understand, like, you seem interesting, you're definitely the risky candidate, right? And, I thought when I applied for this job at Barnard that I thought I looked at it and I was like, they're not going to pick me. They're going to pick like the person who was the director of the Leadership Center at Wellesley. Like, that's what they're going to choose, right? And I've always had to be this, like, tell your story. Like, I need you to know what I need you to know, right? And so the through line through all of that has been helping people figure out how to tackle challenges that are in front of them as like a partner, a coach, a support. Like, it's unlocking potential in people that is right there. It's right in front of them. Like, I don't have to do much to unlock it, but it's helping you figure out how you tackle that. So, you know, as a lawyer, I may not be able to sue whatever you wanted for you. You may need something different. Maybe you actually really just wanted an apology, right? It was in the civil rights context, like the law isn't going to give you the outcome you want usually. And so it was like figuring out what people really needed and how we could help there. Design is all about that. And in journalism, it was like, how do you understand what the needs are? Like, what is your audience trying to do? And how can I help you with the information you need to get you to do what you want to do? So
which is why we started with that with our audience today.
Exactly. No, and it would be pointless if we didn't, right? Because I think it is important to know what people are here for and what they want to do. So that through line, though, isn't apparent like at the start. I think usually it's a story I keep rewriting and adjusting as things become more clear to me throughout.
Let's have everybody type really quickly in the chat the one reason that they showed up today, the thing that we can help them with while we're here. As you're telling your story, I'm riveted by the twists and the turns and the journey that there, and I feel very strongly that try everything and don't plan too much, right? Like, you don't know where things are going to take you. But as you're describing those sort of intersections in your Venn diagram, right? America and Pakistan, law and journalism, you know, the problems that need to be solved now, and yet looking to the future to what are the problems to come, and that it's these overlapping circles, right, in your life where the richness is. And it's so often when we talk about, well, frankly, I don't think it's when we talk about leadership, but it's when we talk about getting a job, just like you said, like, people don't get you, but it's the getting a job that makes you want to make yourself smaller, fit in, dress the part, reimagine, you know, like follow the rules. In your work now at the Leadership Center, do you talk about that tension between following the rules and doing what everybody wants you to do versus doing what's in your heart, following your North Star? How do we
Isn't that like the whole point of college, right? Like, I feel like the point of the 4 years is to come here and figure out what everybody wanted you to do and what you actually want to do. And I will say, like, it was not neat for me because I was that like 5-year, 10-year plan person, right? So of course I was like, I like to read and write. I'm going to go to law school. And I also wasn't able to identify a thing I could do that didn't have a noun. So it was like, I'm going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a dentist. Like, I had to be a thing. And so it totally limited my options. Like, it limited my options to things that existed right now, right? When you look at all the careers that are exciting now, like, most of them didn't exist 25 years ago, right? So if I had leaned into like the skills or the interests or whatever, which I didn't feel free to do. And I literally named my daughter Freedom. Like, her name is Azadeh. It means free spirit. It means free of material want, it means freedom. And it's because I want her to be free to do whatever she wants. I didn't feel free. Like, I never did, right? I never felt free. And I have actually a lot of thoughts about the sort of like follow your purpose, North Star piece. We should talk about that too. But you just receive so many messages in college, right? And you receive so many messages about what you're supposed to be interested in and what you're supposed to be doing. And then you keep receiving those messages.
Forever. Every day.
They don't stop. I know.
These messages. It does not stop. Every day. These are the rules that I'm meant to follow, the things I'm supposed to do, right? It doesn't get easier. It gets more confusing, right? I think.
I know. Is my life like Asana? Like, I'm just supposed to have this to-do list and like just keep doing the things. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of people have this path of like, you do a bunch of things and then at some point you're like, oh wait, like, am I happy? Or, you know, did I actually want to do this? And I wish for everybody that moment comes sooner rather than later. I do think many, many people have it, a sort of like, how long have I been doing what was expected for me? And then how long have, when did I feel like actually no one cares, which is the sort of like, yay for your 40s, you care a lot less. That really is true. Like everybody told me that. It was like the thing I was most excited about. And it has proven to be true. I actually can let go of a lot more things that I like could not let go of before. I was absolutely that person who like carried around a backpack of like all the things I was like, stressed about and my grievances and whatever. And I feel like a lot of them are just too heavy now. And so I've dropped them. But I think about how almost every message that we get is a message grounded in fear. It's all just like a fear-based message. And I like, love my mom, like love how I grew up, absolutely raised in a fear-based environment, true, right? Which is like, they were immigrants, like they came here and it was like, it was all fear-based messages. And then you get to a college that's like an elite college, like you got in, you don't risk anything. And then that's fear, right? So it's just been a realization for me over the last couple of years that I really think we do leadership development all wrong. And I think we do leadership development by telling a story of scarcity. And then we answer it with an answer of scarcity. So the story of scarcity is like, everything sucks for women. The story of scarcity is like 2% of VC funding goes to women, 18% of governors are women, 6% of the S&P 500 CEOs are women. Like, and by the way, those are terrible numbers. They are so much worse for women of color. Like they're like 0.02 or whatever in these various places, right? So we are not winning, like it's a terrible game. And I don't even feel like I can play it. So why it's a horrible message. And then I think the way we tell women to solve it, or what we think are hopeful stories are not, we tell the stories of the trailblazers and the groundbreakers and the glass ceiling smashers. And it's like, could anyone other than Hillary Clinton actually have been the first woman nominee? Like, I don't think so, right? I don't think that we as a country were ready for anything other than someone who had been a senator and like, head of the State Department and all these other things, right? So when I look at those stories of the amazing person, it's like, oh, right, like, yeah, she's like was a CEO and, an astronaut and a JD and a PhD and an MD, like, no wonder, right? It's like, I can't be that. So
it's someone who looks like what we have always seen power, right? A very sort of white male idea of
take
power.
it right now, right? It's where we're looking for like, who is the perfect Black woman so that Biden can nominate her to SCOTUS. Like she's got to have the right degrees, all this stuff, right? So it's such a narrow box. And the thing that gets me is we think that's a good story. Like we think that the story of the first or the only is actually like a hopeful story. And I don't think so. And then the solution that we give women is also a scarcity solution, which is like, we need more women in positions of power. We need, we have male CEOs, we need women CEOs. We have, men have been president forever, women need to be president. And I do not disagree that those are incredibly important things. I think it's a really narrow focus, and I think it's really limiting because positions are by definition scarce. So I think more about leadership than I do about leaders, right? Because again, it's like, am I going to add another identity to the pile of identities I'm already trying to navigate? Like that's a lot, right? Do I have to be a leader in like Trader Joe's? Like I want to show leadership in the places I want to show it. And I don't want that to be my identity so that at some point I need a break or I'm burned out or something else happens or whatever. And then I'm not a leader anymore. Like it's too much to negotiate and navigate, right? So I am really interested in, and we're doing this at Athena, and it's what I think I've been doing at other points in my career as well, which is what does it look like to lead from a place of abundance? Like what is an abundance mindset, an abundance approach to leadership? And I think what it changes is so much. So I think the first thing it changes is literally the problem you're trying to solve with leadership development programming. So leadership development programming in that old model is the problem you're solving is gender parity. Like more women here because there are more men here, right? You're just solving like, we need more women in XYZ, which again, I do not disagree with. I think it changes how you approach those problems. So by the way, we're like looking at gender parity and the men are working on climate change. Like that doesn't seem fair, right? And there are parallels to, I think, a lot of race issues as well, which is like, how many, people do you see having to work on things that are directly impacting like their communities and their backgrounds, whereas folks who are not as burdened by those things get to work on whatever they want. Like, like I think striving for racial justice is everybody's responsibility, right? But you're always going to take it more seriously if it's something that directly relates to you. So no wonder men aren't thinking about that, right? We are thinking about that. And then I think what leadership from a place of abundance looks like is, okay, now that we see these challenges as an opportunity to build the world we want to live in, right? Like the things that stand in the way, like let's work on them, right? So I got really good at burning shit down, and it took me a long time to learn how to like build, right? So as you're building from a place of abundance, I think you feel, you embrace collaboration, right? Like this is the not Forbes 30 under 30 model, right? Like you're looking for, like, it's awesome that someone's already doing the thing, because like I don't have to do it all by myself. We might be able to come up with something better together. We welcome it. We appreciate that it's going to be slower and harder, but we're into it, right? I think leading from a place of abundance gives you a little bit more space to take some risks, so you can try. And if you don't get it right, like it's okay. Maybe you don't get a chance again at that thing, like, let's be really honest, right? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but there are things that you will get chances at. And
Well,
so
hold on.
really,
I want to pause you at this leading from a place of abundance, because I believe, because you blew me away when we talked about this yesterday. It's so in line with my philosophy when I talk about new power, right? I'm the founder of New Power Media. The new power is collaborative and free and flexible and diverse. And it's not just that power looks different, right? It's not like this old idea of power and you insert a woman into this. It's that power is different, that the idea of power is different. But when you talk about abundance, right, that we can be better together, let's work on this issue, let's bring multiple points of view into this conversation, that there are still no clear pathways for what that could or should look like. There's not necessarily support. So, like these deep, well-traveled roads of support for that. And there's still people who are like, oh man, it's going to be hard for you. Geez, Louise, how can you think you can do that? And so for this audience of trailblazers that are here in this chat, which by the way, the chat's amazing. I'm just watching it go by. You should you should see the depth of the conversations that is zipping over here. I'm like pulling my attention to you and to them. It's the richest, an embarrassment of riches. But for this audience of trailblazers, when they're thinking about, okay, great, I don't want to think about the first, the one, the only, the singular. I want to think about, how can I build something collaborative that is new and different?
I don't think it has to be new, by the way.
Oh, tell me. Well, let's talk about, how do you shift your thinking, or how do you keep out the old ways of thinking and find give us some.
So a lot of what I'm thinking about is about the internal work for leaders, right? And for leadership, because I think this is a long game and we have to be ready for it, right? Like we can't burn out. We have to be ready for what we want to do. So much of like, so I'm going to take a digression for a moment, right? And it's, we'll get back. I wore hijab for 16 years, from the age of 11 to 27. And I stopped when I was 27 for a whole lot of reasons, but part of it was that it had shifted from being a religious statement for me, which it was when I started, to a political statement. And it was sort of this like, damn the man, like you don't control what I look like. And it was a whole bunch of things that it included, but it was very much like, I will dress the way I want to dress. And like, this is important to me. And I realized that I was like making a statement, doing all this stuff, and no one cared. Like no one saw the statement, no one understood the statement. And it ended up just being like a thing they couldn't get past, which is also a big part of why I stopped. Like folks could never get past that I wore that. But it was the burden of carrying like this stuff that you're like trying to prove or something that like other people are just not even paying attention to or care about. So the work that I'm talking about with an abundance mindset is a lot about what you're choosing to care about, right? So when you're, butting up against somebody who's like, yeah, that's nice, but like, I'm not going to do that. There's other people in the world, like there's other companies, there's other places, like I'll go do it someplace else, right? So it's really about like how much we carry that other folks have not had to, and how much that serves no one, right? Least of all me. So it's sort of like the thing people say about like forgiveness and whatever, like you're just letting people occupy, you forgive people for you, not for them, right? It's kind of like that. It's this idea of thinking about what you are carrying that is holding you back from being able to do the things that you want, and recognizing that there are always people that will want to do it the way you want to do it, and that you will want to work with, and you will find them. I really do believe that.
So there's a letting go, there's a shedding, right?
Yeah.
A peeling back of these old layers. And also I hear this, like, if you're going into work with, you're unaligned with what are the missions, right? Maybe it's, I keep wanting to say chip on your shoulder, but we all know that, like, there are people who walk around with, like, the, you know, the toughness in them, do the damn work, they do it anyway, but they're not enjoying it, right? That you recognize that in yourself and take yourself out of that situation, put yourself in another situation, find
Or
other
see the
ways.
situation differently, right? So I'll give you like an example, right? And this is one of those tactical things. Like I want you to leave thinking, when there's a bad moment, to ask yourself, like, what would this look like if I applied an abundance mindset to it? I know how corny that is, but it really has like changed things for me. So as an example, think about a time when like a person who you worked with left and you freaked out, right? You were just kind of like, oh my God, like, am I going to have to do more work? Or like, should I leave too? Or, you know, there's all like, right? Like one of your work buddies is gone. And my immediate reaction is like a tightening, right? It's like and I have to stop myself and say, what does this open up, right? Like, what is an abundance mindset way of looking at this? Like, what does this open up for this person? I'm so excited for them, for wherever they're headed. And what does this open up for me here? Like, how might I find another partner to do my work or whatever? I know this is so corny, but it really, really has worked. Another example, like someone comes into your organization and you're like, oh my God, it's going to unsettle like everything. Like, who is this person? What are they working on? Like, is this going to change things? Or your mindset is like, I'm fine, like this, I'm going to be okay. What does this open up for me, for this person to be here? Like, how might I approach this with abundance? And I will say that doesn't mean the other person always receives it. Like, doesn't mean that you doing this means the environment is one of abundance. But how will you survive the environment otherwise? Like, how will you keep moving forward and making choices otherwise?
I think that another thing, and I see some of this coming up in the thread, right? Like, this is not something, this is a muscle. You can feel the tightening, you can feel the territoriality, you can feel the like pang, the wound.
You feel threatened and you feel worried and you feel panicked and anxious, right? And I think that lots of people in leadership positions feel that, right? So I think it is a way of allowing you to just like reset how you see something, to see if there is an opportunity for you. And I like am not blind to the fact that this is just what you can do. Like, the environment can continue to be shitty, right? But an abundance mindset is also like, there are other environments, like right. There are other jobs, there are other, and I don't say this like from some extreme place of privilege. Like, I know it is not easy to find, you know, the right next thing or whatever, but we've all been in something bad and we're all still here. So there are other environments and other possibilities. And it's just such a, like, it is just a framing that has really changed the way I think about a lot of things. And it really, I think, matters for women, and especially young women. And I will say that, like, I have a 9-year-old, right? She already kind of wants to be perfect. She already gets really mad when she doesn't know how to do something or doesn't get it right, or it doesn't work out the way she wants, like mad, right? And so how many young women do you know who feel this extraordinary pressure to be perfect, right? Like, who just feel like there's no space for them to mess up, and they want to, like, they have to be this
paralyzing.
way. It's paralyzing,
it's paralyzing.
Right?
It's an entire chapter in my book about this pressure that young women feel to be perfect.
Yes, exactly. And so if you are, they're feeling that because of the messages of scarcity that are constantly coming their way. And I'll say, like, you know, one of the things that blew my mind when I got to Barnard was like, and this was not my experience, I see some of my friends in the chat who will remember it's also not their experience. I had a student tell me, like, oh, I didn't get into the neuroscience club. And I'm like, you didn't get like to be on the e-board? And she's like, no, like, I didn't get into the neuroscience club. Like, you have to apply to be a member of a club that represents your major. What? And so it's constant application, constant like proving yourself, constant all of that. And so just framing it this way is like the smallest, biggest thing you can do. because I think it is what we all need to do, because I believe these women will design the future. And so if we start now, that's what we're working on. And I will say one more thing about an abundance mindset in the context of women's leadership programs. And that is, what would it change for us to think beyond the binary too? Like, is the binary actually a scarcity thing? So one way to think about it is, I say, oh, Barnard, Athena is no longer a women's leadership center because Barnard has students who are non-binary. That's just like inclusion. That's like updating my website, right? But what does it actually mean to build a center that is thinking about leadership and what it looks like when like some vast percentage of Gen Z doesn't think the binary is important or real, right? So I know this is so much like internal work. And I think a lot of the work we do in leadership development programs is like an imposter syndrome workshop, a find your purpose workshop, like these one-off things that are designed to help fix something about you when the system is broken, right? And I do think that this shift is what allows us to build the new system that we want to live in.
Umbreen, you are like giving me chills. The idea that it's a lot of the conversations that I'm having these days about power and leadership is about thinking beyond the binary. And you're right. It's easy to update your website. It's hard to do the work. And
because updating your website, by the way, is inclusion, and inclusion sucks because inclusion means come into my space, right? So that is completely different than us co-designing and co-creating a space that is for all of us. So I am trying to figure out, and I have not solved it. I'm trying to figure out like, what is the way for me to think about it when I also recognize that women do have unique experiences, and I'm not trying to be like a non-cis man's work leadership center. So we're still figuring all this out, right. But like, again, cheesy, but abundance is like, you know what, just keep trying. Like, we're going to get there. Instead of, there's so like, it's that physical tightening that I think I've been addressing with this, that it's so easy for us to feel in all of these moments. And it's because it's really easy to default to decisions made from a place of fear.
Speaking of a place of fear, there was a couple of questions that I saw zip by about imposter syndrome. And it felt very much like, as you were talking about the tightening, territoriality, the negative, the fear. Can you talk, and also the thinking that says, you don't really belong here, or this place isn't for you. Oh yeah, sure, we let you in, but like, it's not for you. Can we talk a little bit about that idea of imposter syndrome? Because
it's like my least favorite topic. So okay. Yes. So it's my least favorite topic in that it's like the solution that we give to women, and like, name a women's leadership program that doesn't offer an imposter syndrome workshop, right? I can't. But I will say that we have all felt a feeling of not belonging. And I don't think that that's necessarily an imposter syndrome. I think that's real. Like, I've been in places where I don't belong because I didn't belong there. They didn't want me there. So what I it wasn't an imposter thing. Like, they didn't want me there. That's real. Right. So I think there's like some gaslighting weird shit that happens there, talking about it as imposter syndrome. Like, I feel like I'm not good enough. No, you are sending me messages that I am not good enough. That is making me feel a certain way. But I don't feel I'm not good enough. Like, I just feel I'm not good enough. Like, you have made it very clear that you want to run a certain kind of space and I don't belong in it, right? So this is kind of what I think about when I think about imposter syndrome. But this is the second tactical thing I want to give you, which is that is all about your like WhatsApp group. Like, who is your group chat? Like, who are your people who just like would roll their eyes like when you say this stuff? Like, who are the people who just know you, who you can count on to reset you? So like,
the list.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, right? Like, after Rachel's introduction, I kind of just want to text her every time I have a bad day. But, there are people in your life that are there for you, right? And so one, like, life goal to strive to be that person that for other people. But I think that that is the reset. So like, I had an uncomfortable meeting this morning, cried, all the stuff, right? And like, I sent a message to one of my group chats and I was like, shitty thing happened, described it. I was like, do not want to engage with anyone, like cannot talk about it. Don't want to answer questions about what happened or whatever. Just want to know how to reset. And they were like, ice cream, this song, whatever, it was like a whole bunch of things. And it was like, because when I'm ready, we'll talk about it. So it's that group chat that I think helps you survive that stuff. But the imposter syndrome thing for me is really just like, yeah, no wonder, because they're telling you you don't belong. So like, let's just name that, and I'll say the happiest women of color I know have created their own spaces. There's something to that. So that's something worth thinking about too. People who have always been excluded.
Even the turn of phrase imposter syndrome is one of the things that kills me, because I don't know why.
Because it's like hysteria. It's like all the syndromes that women have. Something's wrong. It's a
disease.
Medical thing.
It's a disease, right? Why is it a disease not to know something, right? To feel like you have some room to grow, to step into this role, to step into this position. And
and why is an imposter syndrome like your exclusion problem? Like you are not a warm and inclusive person. And so I feel I do not belong. I do not have imposter syndrome. You have an exclusion problem. So I like cannot with imposter syndrome, because I think it's like, we spill a lot of ink on it. But I also think because we spill so much ink on it, we had to talk about it right now, right? Like we have to talk about it. But my kingdom for, a day in which in the women's leadership space in which we don't, focus on that.
Christy Botello says, the whole system is set up for others to define your worth. So no wonder we're always questioning ourselves, which also there was another comment in here from Christina Blacken, who, I'd say it again and again, really opened my eyes in a conversation early this year when I was telling her that how hard I was working to try and convince people to see a new dynamic of power in a new way. Yeah. And she said to me, like, stop trying to convince people, gather your people around you, yeah. Right? And maybe it starts with your group text, right? But that grows, right? That you're bringing more people into, surround yourself with people who see the world the way you do. And
there's 7 billion people in the world, right? So like they are there. There are people who are like, have your back, think about things the same way. Like a lot of this work is just walking around, finding your people. Like most of my work is connecting people in dots. It's like a good part of my work is like, you can do this, right? And they're like, no, I can't. And I'm like, here's how, and we'll work on it together, right? So it's like, a lot of it is just like, I'm there for you. And a lot of my work is connecting people in dots. Like I have met a lot of people in my nomadic life. So the next time someone wants to, start a new organization, acquire a group, whatever, like I'm going to be like, I know exactly who you should talk to. And I have faith in your generosity that you will talk to her, right? So, and by the way, if you don't or can't, like, I think there's a comment in here about Christy's comment about how the whole system is set up for others to define your worth. This is just like a realization I've had, which is how much power we have given other people. Like how many people we're like reporting to, right? It's like having like 55 bosses, or like, I just can't with that, right? And so I think it is just, I've gotten so much better at understanding, like, that's a you thing, this is a me thing, right? So like this meeting went badly or whatever, how much of that was a her thing, how much of that was a me thing? I'm better at doing that, and it's just practice. But it's I think we have to move to a place in which we let other people have less power to tell us who we are or what we're doing. And I think it's like a muscle, a repetition thing. It's like the group chat, it's the question to myself, it's that stuff.
I'm so struck by the ways in which it's very often in conflict with, you've got bills to pay, you've got a job to do, right? There, you need to fit in, mold yourself, wedge yourself into somebody else's definition. And so I hear you when we talk about freedom and flexibility and the support that you need. But it's
the mindset shift will help you deal with it better. And the mindset shift will help you see what else is possible. So that's, I think, a big part of it too, is that I think all these things are around us and exist. And the mindset shift doesn't mean that the person who treats you badly in the workplace is going to treat you better. That's just a them thing. Like I can't change that, right? But it puts power back into me to be like, I'm going to receive it a certain way. I may still hate it, but like, I'm going to think about what an abundance mindset in this might teach me, right? Like, what might I do here? And I do believe that abundance mindset is going to help you see other opportunities that you might not have seen while you were paralyzed. So it's not like a perfect solution. I think we have to use a lot of tools to like build the world that we want. I think this is one that really matters. But I think the fundamental framing for women's leadership is just panic and fear-based and sad. Like it's just not like the joyful life that I think any of us want to live.
Joy is hard to come by these days. It's definitely like a rare commodity.
But you know what's so strange? I will say that I think that's true, but I will say that as I've been able to make this shift, it is easier for me to come by. So like I'm an evangelist for like my air fryer and my Buy Nothing group. So we can put the air fryer aside now, although if anyone wants to talk about it, I can. But the Buy Nothing group is like a group of people on the Upper West Side who literally will stand next to some like chair on the sidewalk that someone saw and carry it to your apartment 30 blocks away because why not? And so it has been such an interesting like experience in the pandemic to see people just show up for each other without any expectation of anything. Like I think I can see more joy when I think this way. Whereas I think other people are like, why would you go to that person's house? Or why, like, you know, there is a non-abundance way of thinking about it too, right? So I don't believe like changing your mind changes everything, but I do believe we cannot carry as much as we've been carrying if we are going to build the world that we want. Like we're going to have to like change some of the stuff that's like in our backpack and deal with that.
Well, so to come back to something you said earlier on, right, is that we are in a sort of social justice, racial justice space, are thinking about the ways to really tackle racial and social justice, right? To talk about equality in new ways. And yet there are people over here who are just zooming up the charts in climate change and STEM and like unburdened by the tilted playing field and the challenge to fix equality in addition to solving climate change, right? To be a climate scientist. But you said something to me yesterday in our prep, which I want to talk through yesterday, that bridges that divide, that talks about that not, that you don't have to think about one has to happen and then the other, that they can happen in parallel. Will you talk about that a little bit, about how we use every moment to do both?
I will.
Climate change and rise and solving equality.
And this is part of me just being like, I'm really tired and I just can't be so tired anymore. So what are the things I'm going to put down? And part of it is, you know, viewing racial justice challenges as their own challenges, right? So like the women's leadership programs that are for women of color that are like, you know, most of them are very well intentioned and do great things. So it's not that, but it's like an additional thing I need to go to, right? It's like an additional mentor. It's more. And I think that as long as we think about racial justice issues, even sustainability issues, disability issues as their own issues, we will, only the people who are most affected by them will be able to spare the time and energy to work on them, right? Like it's going to always fall that way. And I think every challenge is a racial justice challenge. I think every challenge is a sustainability challenge. I think every challenge is a disability challenge. In every challenge, you have an opportunity to make choices that lead us to a more equitable world or a less equitable world. And that is as simple as like, and I'm not, by the way, calling you out, like this is something I'm still working on, but like, is this Zoom accessible? Like, did we have a transcript? Like, is that, you know, like there's all these moments in which the small choices are the big choices actually, right? And so are there sustainability choices I can make? Are there racial justice choices I can make? I actually have like a lot of what we're talking about basically, and a lot of what we say to students there is like, you have enough. You don't have everything, but you have enough to get started, and together we are enough, right? So in my choices, as I bring on speakers at Athena, I'm always looking at the slate, like who hasn't had a chance to speak and who do I bring in, who could, you know, where do I need to raise money for an honorarium, that kind of thing. So I think all of that is racial justice work and sustainability work and disability work and all of those things. Like those are all lenses. They are not issues. They are lenses we have to put on every single challenge we tackle.
You're getting all the claps, all the exclamation.
I'm trying to like move through the chat, but it's like too much. Although I see Catherine and I am so excited because Catherine's like my whole heart. And yes, preservation of energy in this sphere in order to offer it elsewhere. And I, by the way, see the contradiction between that. I see this like, I want an abundance mindset. I have finite energy, but it's just what it is. Like we do have finite energy. So where are we spending it? I wish I had spent it on like a better
now.
But yeah. Say that again.
I see Rachel in the background. Rachel, are you wrapping me up?
No, I'm just wrapped.
Oh, okay, good.
Little play on wrapping
Because
and
we're not
wrapped.
done yet.
And Rachel,
no,
we
we're just-
haven't
we're-
solved that either, by the way. Like we have not made our events fully accessible either. We're trying to figure it out and work on it, right? So like not a call out.
No. I mean, Umbreen's reacting to what I put in the chat, which is that she's absolutely right about the event accessibility and closed captioning. And thank you for that. I mean, this is why we're having these conversations. The whole point of everything is to get better and to do better, and to lead better, and to not be an imposter. Okay, I'm gonna shift it back over to you, Anne, because there's questions.
Okay, good. Yes. So Umbreen, let's answer a couple of questions and then we'll send everybody back to work. We'll do can we do 10 more minutes? 10 more minutes. We'll answer a couple questions. Yeah, thumbs up. Great. We'll answer a couple of questions and then Umbreen, you'll give us final marching orders, the thing we can do one foot in front of the other when we get off this call. So I want to zoom back. There was a question earlier that when everybody was sort of setting their intentions for what they wanted that I thought was really interesting, from Ivana, where she says she wants to better understand how intuition can and authentically intersects with ambition, particularly in a changing world. And you and I had talked a little bit about this old idea of ambition and power. What does power look like, right? We were talking about yesterday on our call. I don't want to get us off track, but we were really talking about what Shiv on Succession and this sort of cutthroat, manipulative, conniving, nervous.
Those are the messages. They're ambient. They're everywhere.
What that means about power. My goodness, and misery and the misery that comes with it. My God. But can you talk a little bit about, maybe this is something that you do at Athena, because so much of the conversation now is about bring your whole self, right? About how does your authenticity and your ambition intersect?
Yeah, so the bring your whole self thing, I think is very interesting because it often doesn't work when I bring my whole self. So my whole self doesn't belong or is not welcome everywhere. So I'm just conscious of that. So I think it's bringing the parts of myself that I want to bring and feeling empowered to bring those, right? Because when I am my whole self, that may not be welcome in a workplace. I don't know. My whole self is, there are people who are uncomfortable with women of color in workplaces. It's true, right? And so my whole self is not always, I just think that's again, not the conversation, but I hear what you're saying. I think it's being able to feel like you bring the story, the parts of yourself that you want to. But I don't know, I'm not sure how to answer that because to better understand how intuition can and authenticity intersects with ambition, each of those concepts is so big, I don't quite know how to unpack them. So say more so we can do it.
Ivana, tell us more in the chat. In the meantime, I do think one of the things that's so interesting to me, and because I know we have women here from the big life community, which are sort of early and mid career, that sort of Gen Z, millennial intersection, and then the list, which is probably largely Gen X women, that the ways in which we think about power and success and influence and leadership is different. We've grown up with different messages, but what are you learning from Gen Z at Barnard? What are the things that we all need to know?
First of all, so much. It's very humbling. So I learn a lot every day. I learned that young women are under more pressure than I even thought. So I thought it was a lot. I think there is a lot. And I think it's world stuff, right? Pandemic, historic elections, all this kind of stuff, right? I don't remember this much stuff happening when I was that age, right? So I think it's a complicated world. I think it's a lot of information, dealing with information from a lot of different sources, which is also kind of a change for me. One of the sort of it's so small, but it really turned out to be a big thing for me is how do you communicate with Gen Z? Literally, how do you get in front of their faces? because there's so much information coming at people all the time. So the most common thing I hear from students is like, oh, I didn't know about that. And it's like, how do you process this amount of information? So I thought like, I guess I didn't think it would be that hard. I was like, oh, we'll send some newsletters, just put some stuff on social media. But like, you follow a zillion accounts, like you get a million newsletters, like your email is on all day. So literally getting in front of people was much harder than I thought possible. And so that's really made me think about information consumption for Gen Z and how different it is for us. And I think just like people who are interested in media is, you know, it's a thing we think about. I think that I have met a lot, and again, this is not like the generation is like this. I have met students who are more free and more constrained than I thought, right? So like more like, gotta be perfect, gotta like get this exactly right. Like, please show me exactly how to do this. And also like, yeah, it's like no big deal if Barnard is not a women's college anymore. Like, sure, fine. You know, like, oh, interest, like for me, it's like, whoa, hey, let's like, I want to talk about that, right? Like, I want to understand what that means. That's like a fear-based impulse that kicks in. Like, I'm thinking about those things. Like that, those extremes they feel extreme to me. I don't actually think that they're like irreconcilable or not extreme or are extreme.
There was a nugget in there of what you said that connects to something I was just seeing in the chat from Kendra, who talks about setting boundaries. She's talking about setting boundaries for her team so that they don't have burnout. But I think it's something that even as you're talking about your abundance mindset, I can't help but think, how do you protect that, right? How do you keep that spark alive and burning inside? How can we all do that?
All the group chats, that's definitely part of it, is like, those are real sources of joy, right? We're trying to institutionalize more of it, right? So when we think about the kinds of leaders that we are developing at Athena, they are creative, can see a lot of different approaches to a single challenge, like open, right? Convergent, divergent thinking. They are collaborative, like embrace the opportunity to work with other people. They're courageous, meaning they can try, right? And it may not work out, and it's okay. And this is not the perfect word, but like we have been talking about it as conscientious. They're aware of impact on other people. So we're not also trying to build programs for like, go ahead and try, but like it, you know, you really hurt a bunch of people in the process. Like that is not what we're trying to do. But also, what is your process for caring for yourself, right? So I see a lot of like push to an extreme, drop off for a bunch of weeks, or like, you know, doing really well, took a leave of absence, right? So we are trying to build in more processes in which you are attuned to that and thinking about that. So like a daily check-in on that, or a, you know, a conversation about it, like naming it and coming up with and I don't know, because we're going to build those tools together, but we are acknowledging it a whole lot more, which is not something that I think was acknowledged when we were younger. It was still the like have it all conversation.
Yes.
I know, that's like a giant eye roll. I know.
I know. Look, I mean, we are still talking about have it all. When I wrote my book about millennials, I was like, millennials don't care about having it all. And everybody was like, but they want to have work and they want to have life. Isn't that like having it all? And I was like, it's not. But like the fact that you can't see that is the problem and the challenge. And here we are.
By the way, it's not to have it all that's an issue now. I actually think what I'm seeing now is the do it all. So as an example, I run you know, a Friday fellowship, and it's intensive, right? Like it's all day, every Friday. We pay students as if they were interns on their own projects, right? So like it's a commitment. And last semester I was like, listen, these are the hours, like this is what we're doing. And I was like, I know that Barnard students are like, oh, we have a lunch break between 1 and 2. Like I'm gonna do an internship during then. Literally got an email today from a student who's like, I just secured an internship for that time. Like, would that be possible? And I'm like, no, it's not, right? And I love this student, but it is absolutely like it's the do it all part that I fear is going to lead to a lot of burned out 25-year-olds unless we are able to shift our thinking about how we do this and have some filter through which we make choices. Because one of my filters is like, I look for generous workplaces. Like I want to work in a place where generosity is what I feel. And I can tell you exactly what that looks like. And it is my filter, right? And so like it just helps you like make choices in a world of a zillion choices. That's really, I guess, how I think about it.
I love generosity as a word, as a mantra, as a guiding force. All right, wrap us up. Tell us the one thing you want everybody to do when the question you want them to ask, the thing you want them to do, the nap you want everybody to take when we get off.
That is number one, take some naps. Moving to working back in the office really adjusted some of the things I was doing. But it's the two things we talked about. So number one, like, who is your group chat? Who are your people? And do you have a few of them? And if you don't have any, you can email me, like, I'll do it for you. We will talk about
Email
this.
me.
So
I've got some
I
for
think,
you.
like, yeah, it's the thing I tell students more than anything. The thing I always say I want them to know is, I wish you knew how many people were rooting for you to succeed. Like, I wish you knew how many people were like just in your corner, like just so pumped to be like, oh, you need help with that? Like, I'm here, right? And by the way, all these things impact students of color differently, right? Like, students of color are way less likely to ask for help. And so I have to like aggressively go and be like, what help do you need, right? So it's that, who are your people, who's your crowd? And then I would say the next time you feel that tightening, you feel a sense of loss about something, professionally in whatever environment, that you ask yourself to just pause and ask, like, what would it mean for me to take an abundance lens on this? Like, what would that change for me?
Umbreen, I am rooting for you 100%. I'm
rooting for you
in your corner. Put me in your group chat anytime you want to like tip on the ice cream to eat or the song to listen to after.
Oh, and part of the secret, by the way, is you got to like mute all your family chats if you're going to have time for those other group chats.
Understood.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Umbreen. Thank you, Rachel Sklar and SaksWorks, and thank you, communities out there. And
I know, I wish I could see you all, but thank you for listening and engaging. I so appreciate it.
Thank you both for, wow, what an amazing, inspiring talk, and such a great reminder, because you really do, like, it's hand in hand with imposter syndrome is also forgetting how many people are rooting for you. And that is really just like such an important reminder. I'm rooting for you, Umbreen. I'm rooting for you, Anne. I'm rooting for everybody who came here today, and everyone who comes to SaksWorks, everyone who's going to go to saksworks.com and sign up for a complimentary day pass. I am rooting for you too. See how I did that? Yeah. Thank you so much for this amazing talk. We have 3 more of them Thursdays at 1 p.m. Learn with the list. Please join us and please go to the list. You've got all the social handles in there. Between SaksWorks, the list, Anne and me, you'll definitely be covered informationally and really in every other way. Just hit us up. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your lunch hour with us, and go forth and be abundance, create abundance, and receive abundance.
And I hope you feel great. I hope we actually achieve that. So I hope you're leaving feeling great.
And I hope you're feeling greater possibility.
Then I'll fix that for next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.